cleaning up the place. Guess who walks through the door? Out of the blue, he comes in here acting like a big shot. You think you're pretty smart, don't you, college boy? You think you're gonna actually talk your way out of this one?
One way or another, you're gonna pay up tonight.
I've got something better than cash. I've got a story.
I just walked 2 miles through a blizzard.
I can tell you about the cold. You know, bartenders love to talk.
Wrong. Bartenders listen.
Fact is, I've been feeling very strange lately.
I'm sensing a story coming on here, Gordy.
Shit, I haven't even talked to him for 2 years. You know, I used to see it. He used to always be hanging with the wrong guys. And now I'm really worried that he's got himself involved in some really ugly shit.
Listen up. It's my turn to tell a story.
Well, all this is going down. The killer is under the impression that the bar is empty. A storm like this, everything just slows down.
We all go over there. And when you get there, you remember this. You come and see me, and you say hello.
Hey, and we're back. Another edition of Takeover Tuesday. I am your host, Benner from Black Fawn Distro, and I'm joined today with the editor. This is our nickname for you because you edit basically everything. That's the running joke, but you are an editor. Mike Gallant, welcome to the program. How you doing, my man?
Good, Chris. How are you? Or
good,
Benner?
Good.
I guess I know you as Benner.
Yes. So, welcome to the program. Thanks again for joining us. You are the editor, to our fans of obviously the Oak Room. We just saw the trailer for, and that's now available across Canada on all VOD platforms, including Bell, Rogers, Shaw, TELUS, Cogeco, and MTS, as well as iTunes, Google Play, and on YouTube. So, you've also edited I'll Take Your Dead as well, which is pretty cool. And we're going to dive in there and to discuss both those projects as well as your other projects that you have that you've been working on over the years and your upcoming projects that you're currently working on. But just for everyone that's tuning in, just if you got a question for Mike, if you want to ask him anything about editing or anything about, anything about directing as well and getting in and flying into that avenue, throw it down in the comments below if you're on Facebook Live, and we'll throw it up on the screen during the broadcast, and we will try and get some answers for you. But Mike, let's jump in, man. Let's talk about what have you been up to lately, and thanks again for taking over Instagram. Did you have fun doing it, and what did you learn, if anything?
I learned that this is a job that needs a pretty big pay raise in terms of this is a lot of work to manage an Instagram page, be receptive to people coming in and commenting and liking stuff, as well as posting and promoting stuff, and what's the right stuff to post, and what do you write in those posts that is engaging and fun for everybody. So this is an avenue of the job that is a big part of the job now in this world. Like, digital marketing is pretty much numero uno. Everything else takes a back seat now. And, it just reminded me of how hard that job is and how, I don't think I'm necessarily built for it the way people like yourself and Chris Giroux are. So, I'll always leave that to the professionals, but I enjoyed it, man. It was a lot of fun. It was just interesting to see what kind of fans you guys have and the reception that we've gotten. Like, there's people that are asking me questions and I'm like, who is this? Like, and they're so like interested. It's not even just a fleeting question. It's like deep questions about certain things. So it was a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed it. It just made me realize I should probably do that more myself.
So and this is coming from a guy that, you've spent a number of years in the editing suites, in the, not necessarily, I guess, the cutting room anymore, from a traditional sense, but
if that existed, I wouldn't know how to do that. Yeah, I wouldn't know how to be in a cutting room floor.
But talk to us about how did you get into editing? Like, I know you went to film school, et cetera, but what drew you to kind of like editing films together? And was there something in particular that kind of brought you to that part of the industry first, I guess?
Yeah, I would say a big part of that was Chad Archibald for sure. He and I have a relationship that goes back, I would say, 2009, 2010. I tried to find some old photos of when we worked together. We worked for Molson Coors. He worked for this events company. So I was part of the marketing team, and I would go out and film the events. And then me, more specifically, I would cut those events together in like tiny little like 2 5-minute videos. And I remember the night that Chad and I really worked together, he was in charge of the projector or the big TV. It was at the Coors Light Mystery Mansion, which it was outside of Calgary, I believe.
Well, I feel like there's a good story coming in right now.
I mean, those parties were just crazy. And to be honest, I don't think they could even exist anymore. The world that we live in nowadays, it just that and it was sliding ever since, I started working there. Like just progressivism just started taking over those things, and maybe rightfully so. I don't know. But yeah, so Chad was in charge of the TVs, and then the team I was a part of would go out and shoot the events and people partying, having a good time. Like, it was a really, really crazy weekend. People got blitzed and had a lot of fun. So I would cut those videos together to music. It'd be like little music videos. And then I would burn a DVD, because that's the time frame we're talking. And I would have to go take that to Chad. And I literally don't sleep those weekends. Like the party would go until like 2 a.m. And then I would be in the little cabin editing stuff together until like, 7 a.m. the next day. Like it was those weekends, I just literally never slept. And then, I would hand over the DVDs. And then it was really funny because Chad and I would go back and forth, and he'd be like, this is the wrong region of I was like, so I got to go burn this again. And back then it's like burning DVDs, like that would take up your day, like just,
I remember. Yeah.
Even like a 5-minute thing, you're like, so I'd have to trudge back and like redo it. And it was really funny because I was starting to get really frustrated with him, because you know what Chad's like. Chad's like a hard guy to read. Like you don't know if he's messing with you or if he's like just being nice or whatever. And especially back then, I didn't know him that well. So, but he and I bonded big time over that. And then I just paid attention to his career as it progressed over those years. And I saw that he was getting into feature filmmaking, and he was making horror movies and all this stuff. I saw a lot of that going on online on Facebook and everything. And so I was just paying really close attention to it. And that was always something that I wanted to get into myself, but I had never really found a path into that. And then I went out and made my own feature just because the technology had sort of caught up to where you could shoot something for relatively cheap and it would still look good, like with the lenses and, a lot of these, it was basically the mirrorless revolution. You could shoot 4K stuff now with, tiny little cameras. So I went off and did that. And then that sort of opened up conversations with a lot of people. And Chad was one of those. And then things progressed over the past over a year or two. And I did like a little promotion with them. And then he's like, I'm shooting my first feature. I'm shooting my next feature, because it'd been a few years since Heretics. I think there was a bit of a gap between Heretics and I'll Take Your Dead. And then he brought me on for that. But that was like, I thought we were going to shoot like the year before. We shot that, I think, at the end of 2018 it was, or like the beginning of 2018. But he was talking to me, it was going to happen like February of 2017. So I got so excited for like a year. And then finally it came around, and it was great, man. That was a really memorable and fun experience. It was terrible for everyone there, just in terms of the weather. It was like -40 some days. But, that was a really, really great group. And that was like the first time I felt respected on a set, if that makes sense. Like so many times I'd been on a set and had like imposter syndrome. It's like, because I'd always been like a PA or just something low level, and I never felt everyone kind of looked through me, which is, it is how it is at that stage. So that was the first time like I actually enjoyed being on a set and around these people. Right. And it was great, man. Yeah.
And then, so you worked on I'll Take Your Dead, which was directed by Chad, and then you kind of went on to work on Oak Room, which was directed by Cody. What was the difference between those two films? Because they're both similar. They're very different films, but they're very similar as far as setting. Sort of very removed from any sort of city life and going into like the country. Very somewhat isolated and that sort of stuff. Did you find a lot of similarities between those two films when you were editing them, or were they completely different?
I would say the experience between those two movies was pretty drastically different, just because we shot the exterior stuff of Oak Room like in March, and then we didn't shoot the interior stuff till like June. So there was this giant gap of time between the production. And I think just because of the nature of that production, it felt like everyone was sort of more into their worlds. Like on I'll Take Your Dead, I was staying in the same house as Chad. I think Cody was there. Yeah, Chad, Cody, Jeff Mahar, the DOP, and Chris Giroux. And so it was kind of this weird winter vacation sort of situation up in Aurelia. Whereas Oak Room, everyone was sort of more in their department. And then we shot it at the studio. I can't believe I forget the name, but it's a studio down like Burlington, Oakville, that area. Actually, a studio I worked on another movie prior to that. But the crew was great. Like there was a lot of people that I worked with a bunch of times. So, but I was sort of more in my own world on that one. And that's fine. Just, it was like a play. It was really, really long takes, like, Peter and RJ, the main actors, they would act out a scene for like, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And it's not a lot of action. It's a lot of talking. It was great. It was really great dialogue. And Peter was, fantastic. I never got tired of working on his stuff. But yeah, it was a little more arduous. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of people out there who haven't seen the Oak Room yet, highly recommend it. It's very much feel as sort of like Glengarry Glen Ross, No Country for Old Men, Fargo, but it's sort of like two men stuck in a room, talking, stuck in a bar talking, and obviously RJ Mitty from Breaking Bad, and Peter Edderbridge, who is a career working actor with there's the puppy, cameo appearance.
I think the guys are leaving, so he's just announcing it.
Yeah. So you're in the midst of renovations, not to divert a little bit, but you're in the midst of renovations. So we do appreciate.
I thought they'd be gone by now, but of course, man.
But yeah, I mean, it like, looking at the Oak Room, I mean, it is very much a very isolated film, and very much a dialogue-driven, character-driven piece, where so much attention to detail has to be placed on the reactions, the expressions, and that interaction of that, almost like that dance, right, between characters. Yeah. Would you say that's a fair assessment, you think, of that film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll Take Your Dead, you could argue, is a chamber film as well. Oak Room definitely leans more into being a chamber film, like a more traditional. It's based off of a really well-written play, and Ari Millen brought that to I guess Cody, and then they ended up producing it and, made the great film that exists. What I liked about I'll Take Your Dead is that it had this mix of action and even, well, I guess comedy too, but it had this mix of like action and horror. And, the Ava Preston, who played the little girl, she was just, I mean, watching her act.
Friend of the show.
Yeah. And watching her act was just, it was a religious experience. I had never seen an actress that good, let alone someone who was 12 years old. Like, it was just crazy. And the Oak Room had, it's a little slower pace, but what it built up to in the end, and I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody, I think the payoff is so good and just so juicy. If you're a cinephile, you just love that sort of stuff. And it had like more of a Tarantino feel almost, like The Hateful Eight or something along those lines, or like you said, Glengarry Glen Ross, or something along those lines. But
A Blood Simple comes to mind too.
Yeah, I haven't seen that
where
one, but yeah.
there's always these two characters kind of interacting, and it's like an ebb and flow between all their dialogue. But it's a fascinating film. We're happy. Obviously, we're a bit biased. We're helping release it across Canada. It's available on all VOD platforms across the country right now, on Rogers, Bell, Shaw, TELUS, Kojiko, as well as SaskTel, MTS, Google Play, iTunes, and YouTube. However, also, if you're watching this from internationally, it is available as well on VOD in England and Ireland, in the UK, as well as in the United States and Australia and New Zealand. So heads up, if you haven't seen it, make sure you rent it tonight. And there is, and also I'll Take Your Dead is also available as well on those platforms as well. And it's also available in our online store at blackfawndistribution.com on Blu-ray and DVD. So, but let's jump sideways a little bit here.
Okay. Whoa.
Because you are not just an editor, although that's kind of what would maybe potentially be on your business card, I guess. But you've also written, produced, and directed a number of shorts as well as a feature film. What can you tell us about that? You had a feature film called Duchess of Cancun, and then you've also just had an award-winning short film released recently called Terror Beach.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot I guess I could say about those two things. As I mentioned earlier, the feature film was. It was just this scratch I had, or this itch I had to scratch in terms of, I wasn't in the industry at all, at least on any meaningful level. And like I said, this revolution that happened with the mirrorless cameras and all that stuff. So I just decided, all right, if I put all my eggs in one basket and really try and make this happen, can it happen? So I ended up, I had all right, I'm going to move real quick.
Okay, no problem. So we're just going to so for those of you just tuning in, Mike has moved himself recently. He's also moving currently right now around his house, but he is in the midst of some renovations right now, so we're giving him an opportunity just to kind of reset.
Yeah, sorry
he's
about
also
that.
He's also got a furry friend too, which keeps him busy and also likes to speak as well. So up here, what's your dog name again? Sylvester. And he's got an Instagram as well, right?
Yeah, he's blowing up on Instagram. I posted the hell out of him on throughout the day. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, so I just decided to put all my eggs in one basket and just see if I can go out, and it was almost like an experiment to see if I could do that. And I thought the only thing I could sort of differentiate myself from everyone else who was trying to make a film, especially in Toronto, is just go to a completely different location that would, mean something to me and I was kind of familiar with. So I went down to Cancun, Mexico, and that was an experience trying to make all that happen. But ultimately, we shot down there for 9 days. It was a hell of a lot of fun. It was a hell of a lot of work. But what we ended up coming out with was pretty. I go back and forth with how I feel about it. Some days I'm like, good job, man. Like that was a lot of work. And then other days I'm like, I wish, there's different decisions that you wish you could have made. But I think actually working on other productions, because now I've probably done over a dozen or so. I feel like I have a new appreciation for it now because it feels, I feel like I did the best that I could, and it's nothing to feel bad about. Like I said, and it was the first thing I had ever done. So, I'm going to make the mistakes that was, and I knew that going in, I knew I was going to, but I think ultimately I made as little mistakes as I could have liked. There's a lot of stuff afterwards with distribution and just dealing with, the QCs, like all that stuff ended up being a bit of a nightmare to deal with. But ultimately, I am happy with it. It really is
part of the entire movie process. I think, as far as I know, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Well, I mean, yes and no. I think if you have someone that helps promote it, it can be a lot of fun. Like if you're able to plug it into, like if you have like a nice premiere and a pretty cool place for something to go, that stuff can actually be pretty exciting. I worked
I'm not
on
talking about
something.
the promotion stuff. I'm just talking about the deliverables and the
Oh
quality
yeah,
control
yeah. Oh,
and
totally. Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
technical end of things.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
once
the
it's in the
worst, dude.
bag and you're doing the premiere, that's the fun stuff. That's when
Yeah,
the
totally.
champagne flows and like the limos pull
I think
up, right?
To be honest though, I think that process is probably a little easier for me just because I'm more aware of what is required. But
Right.
I think when I was figuring out Duchess of Cancun, like you got to figure out your legals, you got to figure out all the stuff, and it was really intense, and it cost a lot of money too, and a lot of stuff to deal with. So, but ultimately, I was very happy with how I was pretty happy with how it turned out. It turned out how it went. But in terms of Terror Beach, I did a couple years later, and that was sort of my okay. I had the experience, the experiment with the feature. What would something look like if I didn't cut corners? Not that I cut corners, but if I really focus on something, did something a little shorter, like Terror Beach is only 21 minutes. But what would it look like if I did everything right from the beginning? So that was a lot of fun. It was like it was a tropical destination again. I shot in Florida. It was all American actors.
There's a theme here, guys. There's a theme here. Whenever Mike wants to shoot something, it's always in a tropical setting.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'll Take Your Dead and Oak Room, and those were the coldest fucking
yeah. You need something
ever.
to offset those, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like the snow at all. Like I don't.
No, neither do I.
I don't have any Canadian pride about it. It's the worst. So yeah, I just feel more inspired when I go down to places like Florida and Mexico and stuff. Like there, I'm like, okay, I want to shoot. You know what it is too? I did a lot of live events throughout, like, in the beginning of the last decade and stuff. So I would be outdoors a lot, shooting a lot of events, and I shot it up in Calgary and Vancouver. I've been in outdoors shooting in cold places a lot, and I hate it. I never enjoyed it, and I never got used to it. So I think because I know how stressful movie shoots are to begin with. So I think at least I'm like, okay, at least if we go somewhere warm, that'll take some pressure off. I feel like when places are cold, everyone's tension is just like, it's harder to get people to want to do it. You know what I mean? Or it's harder to push people. So
I want to ask you a specific question about Terror Beach, because it's a very effects laden filled short film, and the effects are amazing.
Thank you.
I think it was Robert Rodriguez that said like he edits his own film because he's able to know exactly how he's going to shoot. He knows exactly how he's going to shoot something because he knows how he's going to edit it. And was that something that was helpful with Terror Beach because it was so effects laden and because those effects aren't there when you're shooting?
Right.
How much did you rely on your editing skills to kind of bring that out in the final piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think being an editor is extremely helpful when you're directing, because I know how stuff usually cuts together. I remember there's this one scene in particular, my DOP was like, oh, like, shouldn't we get this shot? I'm like, I'm not going to cut to it. And he goes, you sure? I'm like, I promise I won't. I ended up actually having to need it, but I worked it out. But I'll give you a perfect. So with the effects, yeah. Well, if you watch it, most of the effects are sort of background stuff. So my mind was always that, okay, if the effects don't work, at least the production value is there. So I can just lean back onto that and just temper it down even more. Like, okay, the effects are shit. Let's just use them very sparingly. Yeah. Or if we get someone who's good at them and we get a lot of great stuff, even better. So there's very little effects that is super important, I would say.
And where can people check out that flick if they're interested in
it's just type Terror Beach into Google and it's, you should get it on Vimeo. Film Shortage has it on there. And I think Shorts has it as well. So they have a page or whatever, and you just, because it was private. It actually got a distribution deal with Shorts TV, I think internationally, which was pretty good. It was wasn't a lot of money, but just a little bit of money. And I was like, wow, I actually made a tiny bit of money on a short. That never happens.
Listen, I've seen it. It's a fantastic short, and any
thanks,
filmmakers out there, or any fans of films or short films or features, like make sure you check out Terra Beach. It's a fantastic. It's such a world building short. Like I haven't seen.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen it. I'm not sure. I haven't seen a lot of short films that have really built a world that expansive in such a short amount of time. It's very impressive, man. So if you get a chance out there, check out Terra Beach. It's on Vimeo. Just type it in the old Google machine. It should pop up.
We have an Instagram page and everything. So it's very easy to find.
Okay. And listen, let's speaking of Terra Beach, let's jump in. We got a couple of questions here from our audience. We're going to jump in here. One from our our good friend of the show, obviously, Chris. Let's see, how do I get Chris Giroux? There we go. What was it like working with Noel G from Training Day and Fast and the Furious? And Noel G is he in? He's in Terra Beach. I know that, but is he in any of your other shorts or in your feature?
No, that's the only thing he and I have worked together on. Noel G from Training Day.
No, I know Fast and the Furious did not get that. Did not get the yell,
not that emphasis,
yell caps lock on. Just Training Day apparently.
I mean, it was a dream. I mean, I've worked with a lot of good actors and worked, as an editor with a lot of good. He's to me the best that I've worked with so far. And when I did that, I realized how extremely underrated and underused he's been, in my opinion. Like that Training Day scene is so iconic to me, at least. I'm sure it is to a lot of other people as well. But he can be that good all the time, and even more so because in Terra Beach, he doesn't have a gigantic role, but he has like a very pivotal role at a specific point, and he has this gigantic monologue. And he was totally cool the day that he showed up and everything. Like he's as laid back as you think he would be. And then when we were going to rehearse it the first time, so the end of the short is this big monologue where he comes out and he just, he sort of takes over the whole moment. And he did his first rehearsal because we were waiting for the camera guys to set up and do their thing and light up the scene. And he did one rehearsal, and then I just stopped halfway through. I was like, "All right, just stop." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, you got it. Like, we don't need to rehearse this shit. You got it. And I don't want to burn you out because he likes to improvise and play a little bit, and he'll come up with his own stuff as well. And which is what I want. He doesn't. I mean, I'm just some white kid from Canada. He doesn't need to stick close to my lines to make himself gangster. Like he knows what he's a perfect casting in that scenario.
So how did you link up with him for the short? Like, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the wildest story ever. When I was trying to get this done, I actually reached out to Danny Trejo's agent just to feel the temperature of like, is that even possible? Because casting agents in Canada tell me all the time, like, oh, you can't get that person. It's not possible. But I found that if I just cold email their agents myself, or sometimes even go on Instagram and just hit them up myself, 9 times out of 10, or I would say 6 times out of 10, you'll get a response. Right. And so Danny Trejo's agent responded, asked what the budget of the film was. I told her, she's like, that's literally what it would cost to get him, and it's too small. I was like, all right, cool, that's fine. And I reached out to a couple other guys that you might know here and there. And we almost had the guy who played Scarface's brother, Manolo. I forget what that guy's real name is. We almost got him, and then we got a couple guys from Narcos to read, which was pretty trippy. Like those videos came in, and I was like, wow, I know this. It was just weird to hear them say the words. So none of those ended up working out. So we hired a local guy, and he was pretty good. But the day, so I flew to Florida. We shot for 2 days. That's it for the whole thing. And so I shot there the day before day one. And Danny Trejo actually posted a photo with Noel on his Instagram, and it just hit me. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I wonder if we could get that guy. I'm like, that guy is perfect. And I found out they have the same agent. So I just hit her up again. I was like, hey, I know Danny Trejo didn't work out, but what about Noel G, is he available? And then she's like, can you make an offer? And so I made an offer, and then she's like, okay, we accept. So he accepted, I think the night before day one, and he had to be there day two. And he's in LA and we're in Florida. So he had to get on a plane the next day. I remember we're talking a 5 hour, like it's pretty wild, a 5 hour delay, right? Or sorry, 3 hour. Yeah, they're 3 hours behind.
Right.
So he would lose 3 hours coming here. So it was the most stressful moment of my entire life, because we started shooting on day one and I had to give them the deposit. I had to pay them ahead of time. And the night before I had to buy his ticket. I had to do all these crazy things. I had to put him up in a hotel, and I was doing it all on my own. I had no one else to do it for me. Mm-hmm. And plus I was starting the shoot. So I was in director mode, and like, I was so like, I remember we shot a scene that I ended up cutting. It was like the only scene in the whole movie in the short I cut. You don't usually cut scenes in shorts. But I remember they would do a take, and then I had to like answer a phone because someone was sending them money for me, and they weren't telling me that they got the money. They were avoiding my phone call. So I started really freaking out. I was like, did they just rob me, or like what happened here? And what had happened was that he had slept in and he didn't know about his flight. And then he finally got up, and they're like, you need to get on the fucking plane right now, blah, blah. They just paid us. You have to go. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he rushed to the airplane, and he got in at like 2 a.m. in Florida. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was wild, man. But,
Worked out.
Yeah, and like, to me, I don't know how anyone else feels, but I imagine they probably feel similar. He completely makes the short. Like, he elevates the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my opinion, and he was worth every penny for sure. And he was worth all the stress and everything, because then we shot that whole scene. It's like a 6-minute monologue. We shot it in like 45 minutes. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah. And you know what? Sorry, I called him Noel at the start of this, so I do apologize. It's Noel G. So I do apologize. But hopefully he doesn't find out about this. So, but no, that's all he does. He absolutely makes that short, and it's just so it's so awesome to see him in such like an indie production and kind of like helping out, and you know what I mean. Like he's been in so many features that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like actors that are established, they don't need to do certain projects that they don't want to. And it's nice to see them still doing sort of like the indie kind of like, small budget stuff, just to kind of even help out and bring their talents to those projects. Right. It's pretty impressive.
Well, and not only that, but having a guy like that on set, it elevated everybody else too. Right. Like, everyone was just excited to work with him. And he was such a cool guy. Like, he has all these stories. He worked with Denzel. He worked, he was in a Batman. He was in Dark Knight Rises, right? He just has all these like crazy moments that he's been a part of. And but he was like, he didn't really talk about that stuff too much. Like, he just enjoyed kind of hanging out and messing with everyone. And then I think like half of the cast, like, we were done at like 5 a.m. or something like that. And he was staying at the casino up in Hollywood, Florida, where we shot. And so him and like a bunch of the dudes just went and like gambled until like 8 a.m. or something like that. And then he flew home the next day. Like, he was just a really fun, cool guy to be around. And we also had like spectators when we were shooting, because we were out in public so much. So we shot at at this house that was rented out, but 2 floors were rented out. Like, I rented the top, but there were actually people below us. And, we were worried. They're like, well, we're kind of ruining their vacation. Like, we're taking over this whole spot for these days. But especially because Noel was there, they just came out and they watched him like when we were filming that scene. And they were just like dudes were like, this is fucking awesome. Like they loved this guy, right? They loved Noel. And then just to see him be as gangster as he was being on camera, they were just like over the moon with the whole experience. So he certainly brought like a great energy. Like, we had a pretty good energy anyway, but he certainly really brought a great energy. That was a very, very stressful shoot for me. Like, the second day was like 18 hours. It was crazy. And
so So let's jump back to like talking about editing a bit too. We got another question here I want to get to as well from our friends of the show, the OHFP. But is what is the most amount of time that you've had to re-edit a scene and not just touch it up, but just like a complete rework? Have you found a scene that isn't been working? Do you go like how far back do you go? Have you ever started from scratch and tried to rebuild that scene from ground zero, or is it just always just slight touch-ups and then coming back to it? Like how is your process?
That's actually a good question. I would say I don't think there's anything that I don't think there's any point in rebuilding because that doesn't make sense. Like in terms of what the takes are, and you should go with the correct performance 9 times out of 10. So you wouldn't necessarily rebuild and get something different from the ground up, in my opinion. I think what can happen, obviously, is you just make different decisions in terms of like how you utilize the footage. So it's like instead of this dialogue piece, now you take out the dialogue and put music over it and kind of chop it up and put it in different, or do something like that. Like I know, for instance, I'll Take Your Dead, the opening of that was very, like, to be honest, I don't even remember the opening now. No, yeah. The opening was initially the shootout where the lead actress gets shot and then, she ends up on the farm later on. Mm-hmm. And then that was pushed to like this flashback moment later on. And I don't think I'm ever really certain why that happened because Chad sort of took it over from me at a certain point. Like I think we kind of, especially Black Fawn's films, like they sort of take a while to finish in terms of like, because different deals sometimes happen for them. And then certain people are available at certain times to sort of review. So, and everyone's got an opinion, and that's something I actually learned a lot working with them. First on I'll Take Your Dead, and then definitely a lot on Oak Room. There was just a lot of notes and a lot of personalities and things to sort of navigate. And that can be extremely frustrating for an artist, but at the same time, I do also get it as well. Like I also feel like I have a new appreciation for the idea of like studio intervention because I don't even know if I necessarily say they're right, but they see it in a different way. And, your movie has to be marketable. It can't be boring. It can't drudge on, and you can't hit home the same, you got to kill your babies.
And everything is a compromise too, and to a certain extent. But it's, I mean, ultimately, like everyone has like, how can the film be the best it can possibly be, right? And a lot of times too, like, I mean, and speaking of editing, I talk to people all the time saying, it's hard to edit your own stuff too. Like it is because you always have these great scenes and stuff, and maybe they don't all make it in because of time constraints and the length of the film and and the speed of the film and how it moves along and that sort of thing, right? So,
well, I'd say get it on the page first. Like bear these things in mind when you're shooting, when you're writing the script. I find that quite often the scripts get bloated and then they shoot all this stuff and then they realize the movie's too long and then they kind of have to slice it down. Like I have this sad story so Rye Barrett, who I didn't have time to post, but I worked on this film Still the Water, that Rye Barrett, who obviously you guys are really close with. He was in The Heretics and Drownsman and stuff. And so he brought me in on this drama that he did, this indie drama that was set in PEI, mainly because I have some PEI background from my dad's side. And it was great, man. Like that, I really, really, really enjoyed that project just because I think the way that they shot it was really amazing. And I have such love for that island, and to sort of see it represented the way it was really great. And Rye gave like a really excellent performance. Certainly, I think the best that I've ever seen him. And
so this is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. So, but they had shot a lot of movie, and I'm talking a lot, and they probably shot maybe twice as much as they needed to. which is something I was just like, wow, I've never seen something on a production this small, like, and they had a really big scope too. Like they were shooting all over the island and they got some really nice production value in some certain spots. So I had a real battle with the director, mostly constructive, obviously, but I had a real battle with her to get it down because I didn't want her to overextend the movie and then hurt distribution opportunities for her. Because after what I had gone through, especially with Black Fawn and their people, and then a couple of other productions afterwards, I knew just how important running time was, at least on productions on our level. You make bigger movies, bigger budgets, you can sort of push it a little bit more, but
do you have an optimum running time in your head? Like when you start a project?
I wouldn't say it's mine. I would just say like quite on Black Fawn's films, it's like 82 minutes. It's either 82 or 84, something like that. Like Chad tells me it's a really intense mark that they have to hit. And I think they have a little room to play with that, but it's
I think it's about 89. I think it's at 89 minutes, I think is usually.
Well, it definitely wasn't 89. It definitely wasn't 89 on the I'll Take Your Dad. I don't know if it was on Ungr. Maybe Ungr got 84 or something like that, but they're pretty stringent on that, and I haven't seen that elsewhere as strict as they were. But running time is extremely important, and I've now cut actually a couple of TV movies, like for not necessarily for Hallmark, but like around those in that genre, MOVs, right? Movie of the weeks. And those have a pretty tight running time as well. So it's like everything sort of, if you're under 90 minutes, you're usually golden. And so with Still the Water, I was very insistent that she cut out a lot of her movie. And a lot of the scenes, in my opinion, were a little repetitive anyway. Like you get a little new information, but not enough to like, it wasn't worth keeping in my opinion. I'm sure she disagrees with me to this day about that, because I know she was sad about losing that stuff, but they got a distribution deal out of it, which was great. And actually that film and Oak Room on the same day were released on iTunes, and they were both considered new and noteworthy, which was awesome. That was a really good day for me. That was two home runs. And I have a lot of love for both of those movies too. So
you went back through and upped all your offers after that day, right?
Exactly. I'm like, so we're doing more weeks, and you're doubling my pay.
So quick follow up from these guys, because I know they're working on some stuff themselves, but a really good tie-in actually, just talking about shooting in PEI and on the East Coast and that sort of stuff. But again, from the OHFP, do you edit with ungraded raw footage, or do you do a light color correct before you start cutting?
No, yeah.
And that's more of a technical question, because I don't even know.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, no. We definitely color correct afterwards. It would make no sense to do it beforehand. You'd need like a supercomputer to deal with that raw footage. Right. And plus it would just like, you don't even know what you'd be coloring, right? So you're not going to color everything, but you definitely have to. So what I usually do is I'll cut with the raw footage, and then I'll put like a LUT. Sometimes the DOP has a specific LUT, specific look, and I'll put that in. But if they don't, I just put in something generic just to make a pop when people are watching it back and don't think their footage looks like shit.
Gotcha. Okay, so listen, Nick, is this part of the program? I don't know if you know about this, but we have a rapid fire section of questions. I'm sure Chris G did not tell you about this, so I'm so
no, he definitely didn't. Okay.
But just to let everyone know, this section of the program is brought to us by Wellington Brewery, Hell's Lager, Hell's Yeah.
Nice.
It's this part of the program also that I open one of these cans and take a swig because I'm parched.
You didn't tell me.
Delicious beers. I couldn't have them delivered to your house in time. So,
you could have told me. I would have went out and tried to get one. Why do you get down all the fun?
Brewery. Wellington Brewery keeps us running, usually when we're on the convention circuit, but they also keep us running and fully charged when we're stuck at home during global pandemics, apparently. But if you're in the Guelph area, you can definitely swing by there, the brewery on Woodlawn Road. They've got a sweet walk-up window where you can just walk up and get beer. And also as well, they do free local delivery to the Guelph Waterloo area for, I think, orders over $75 and over. So check it out, or you can go to your local LCBO, pick up Hell's Lager, Hell's Yeah, from Wellington Brewery. But Mike, listen, we got a bunch of questions ready to go here for you. There's basically just the first thing that comes into your mind. I don't want 5-minute answers. You have no time to think about it. Are you ready to go?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, rapid fire, yes or no. On football Sundays, you root for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
You gotta pick.
Okay,
You gotta pick one. Benner from Black Fawn Distro, that's me. So in referring to myself in the third person, of course, once mistakenly thought you were an ex-hockey player for some reason. I don't know. I think we were just talking about hockey at a party or something. But you're not an ex-hockey player. But if you were, what would your hockey nickname be?
M-Dog. That's my nickname from college that I made up myself. I gave myself.
And that's why
people still
now,
call
right?
me, dude. Yeah. Well, my best friend from college, he wrote on his wedding plans, we got the wedding list, right? Because we all had jobs to do, and everyone has their full name, and then mine just said M-Dog. I'm like, Jesus Christ, we're 33 years old now. I made that up when I was 17.
So next question, help us out.
Yeah.
You've been on a lot of sets over the years, especially recently you've been on time. Can you tell us a story about something that's happened that on a set that changed your life for the better?
Oh shit. I mean,
that had a real significant impact on your life.
I think the best. I mean, I already talked about this scene, but I think the best moment I ever had. I would say there's two moments that I've had that I shot, that stuff I directed. I can't really say anything other stuff that I worked on, but because I'm usually not on set for those scenarios. But the stuff I had done, there's two scenes that I did. One was in Duchess of Cancun. There's a scene where the lead actor and his semi-new love interest, she was this Mexican actress that we brought in. They have a scene together, and it's like we were going to slice it up into these different moments, but it ended up just being this long 9-minute scene of just them talking. And you're always scared of that sort of shit. You're like, is this going to be boring or whatever? And it ended up being I think one of the best things that I had ever directed, just because they were so good and so natural. And it's exactly the type and it was on a rooftop at night, and you could see the whole strip of Cancun behind them. I mean, it's as cinematic as you can get, for at least the budget that we were working on. So that moment was really that's my favorite scene from Duchess of Cancun. And then there's a lot of good scenes and good moments there too. And then I would say for Terror Beach, watching Noel G do the monologue, especially different times, different angles. I mean, that was poetry in motion, because that's the sort of thing you write on a computer, and then to hear him say it and then say it was such perfection. I mean, that to me, those are the moments I realized that it's I want to be a director. I want to be in this type of moment as much as humanly possible, because I don't think there's anything more satisfying than that.
So next question, what do you want? Yeah. You're picked by a huge studio to write, produce, and direct a remake of any film. What film do you pick and why?
Wow, that's a good question. I've been developing for since I was 17 this version of Peter Pan that's that would be maybe not as hardcore as what is City of God, almost like that, almost like a Nolan-esque version of Peter Pan, where it's brought into modern world, and it's he's not this goofy teenager. He's a hardcore dude. I always thought he'd be almost like a Jesse Pinkman, and then Hook. At the time, Hook was Denzel Washington. He would just be this weird, crazy gangster. that's something I developed for many years. And I fantasize about like doing a Ninja Turtles movie or like a Batman movie or something like that. But I know that's technically not a remake, what I mentioned, but I don't really have a desire to remake something specifically. I would want to just take it and do my own thing.
Okay, fair enough. And then tell us more, without revealing any spoilers, of course. What has been your favorite scene to edit and why?
That's a good question too.
Or one of your, maybe not your favorite. It might be too hard to put a number on number one, but maybe a scene that you're like, that's one of my favorites. That would be my go-to to show somebody.
Yeah, I mean those two that I mentioned before that I felt, that I worked on, those two really stuck with me, like in terms of like I was very proud of how that turned out, especially with the Noel G one, because we only shot it with 45 minutes because the sun was coming up. Like usually you're fighting because the sun is going down. We were fighting the sun coming up, and we only had 45 minutes to do it. And I owed all these people a lot of money, and I was pushing them it was the last thing we filmed, and I was pushing them to the max, and it was the most important scene by far in the whole short film. So that was intense. So I feel good about that. I feel anytime a scene like is meant to make someone cry, for instance, like that is like a really emotional scene, and we get there, like the edit gets them there, I always feel really good about that. Like I'll Take Your Dead had a lot of like nice emotional moments, like the ending sequence. I think like Chris Giroux and I saw that in Calgary. We saw an encore screening like in the morning in like their mall Cineplex. And we came in, I think in the last like 10 minutes, because we were doing the Q&A after, like Chad and everyone had left already. And we were bawling our eyes out at the end of the movie. It was like, I think it was just the early morning. I think it was just the speakers and the emotion of the moment. Like we were really emotionally torn up at the end of I'll Take Your Dead, which is exactly what you always want. And Ava Preston was always really good to get us there. But yeah, and then like I said, the conversation scene with in Duchess of Cancun really always got to my heart. I always appreciated that.
Awesome. Well, there you go. That's it. That's the time you have for rapid fire. So you succeeded. Sorry for putting you on the spot. But again, appreciate you taking the time, being such a good sport about that. And thanks for the insight to your career. I know that just a couple of things to mention as well. For those of you wondering, Noel G and our buddy Chris G, no relation. And also as well, you mentioned earlier that the studio, it's actually Nouveau Studios or Nouveau Network in Burlington.
Yes,
where we shot, where Oak Room was shot as well. So just wanted to throw that out there and give them a little bit of heads up. And also big shout out to Ava Preston, friend of the show. She's been on before as well. She's a
great
actress. And I think Chad told me a story once where on the set of I'll Take Your Dead, and I think they did one take and then they were doing another take, and I think she said to him, "Do you want me to cry like in this take?" And he was like, "Can you do that?" And she was like, "Sure, no problem," and just does it. And so she's an awesome talent,
dude. Like I would see the takes right in between, like. So, they cut but haven't cut yet, whatever, right? And you would see her be like, okay, so the cup has to go back over here because I moved it here, right? And I should be looking in this direction because this is my cue over here. I was like, what age is this girl? Like, who taught her? This is crazy.
Yeah,
and,
she's one of a kind for sure.
Yeah, man, she's really good.
But listen, before we go, let's talk about what you have coming up. I know you just you just finished Vicious Fun. Which is the next Black Fawn film. That's coming out on Shudder on June 29th, which is pretty exciting. And that'll be released in the US, Canada, UK, and I believe Australia and New Zealand. I mean, that's a pretty big accomplishment as well. And I mean, what are you working on currently?
Obviously I'm really, really excited about Vicious Fun as well. Cody and I just basically finished Oak Room and then rolled over into Vicious Fun almost immediately after. And because I read the script while we were editing Oak Room, and I blazingly told him, I was like, I have to do this movie. You have to let me do this next one. I love this script. And the movie came out even better than the script. I was really, The cast is amazing. The cast of that one is amazing. All of their casts are really, really good. But Vicious Fun, I really, really enjoyed that one. So that's coming out. I'm very excited about that. I've had a bunch of projects that were sort of sitting, in sort of what's the word?
Limbo.
Yeah. Like something I did right before I'll Take Your Dead, like 3 years ago, suddenly blew up on Netflix in Africa. And it was like the #1 trending in Netflix Nigeria, Netflix South Africa, and then Netflix Africa overall. And it's just this weird little Canadian Nigerian film that I got in on at last minute. And so I'm really proud of how that one's doing, and hopefully it'll come out in Canada as well. Netflix is always a big deal. Like the reach they have is insane. Yeah. And so recently I actually got on to Eli Roth's new sort of Discovery Plus show. It's a horror anthology about basically a horror museum or a haunted museum about different items based on real events that happen. So there's one that, they claim the devil was in a rocking chair, and I worked on that episode. And then there's another one where a family was possessed by a demon in a basement and they need an exorcism to get it out. And that was like the last exorcism that had been performed in 21 years, which was crazy. So it's really, it's been a really scary project to work on, but it's been a lot of fun. It's sort of returned me to my horror roots, that I started with Black Fawn, even though that's not really my cup of tea, but I do enjoy working on them. And so that's.
And do you have any plans yourself to start to work on another feature film, like maybe something to direct or write, produce on your end as well as editing?
Well, it's funny, while this whole thing was going on with Noel G, because he wanted to help promote, because I was talking about Terror Beach on Black Fawn's Instagram page, and he started messaging the Instagram page, and he's like, who are you guys? What is this? I want to help promote, because we were tagging him in it. And so he and I just were chatting just a little bit. And I'm working on a script that I want to shoot, I think, at the end of the summer. I just moved to the super empty house out in Milton, and I think it'd be a great location for a new project. There's a lot of things that I kind of almost got off the ground, and then whether COVID or money or whatever have made it difficult to do that. But I have something that I'm developing that I think can, I think it'll be foolproof in those sense. So I'm really excited about that. I've been talking with the cast, and maybe I'll get Noel G involved. There's definitely a role he could be involved in, but he's American, so I don't know how hard it is to get those people up here right now. But that being said, that's something I definitely want to get done, and I think that'll probably be my next big project, because I did Duchess. It'll be 6 years in December we shot it, so I'm definitely getting the itch to do another feature, especially after doing all these other great projects that I've been a part of over this past couple of years. I definitely want to get back into the directing chair and put myself through that world of hurt all over again.
Awesome. Well, on that note, Mike, listen, let's leave it there. I just want to say, I think we've taken up way too much of your time today, but thanks so much for taking over Instagram. If you're interested, hit our Instagram up. It's at Black Fawn Distro, and check out all of Mike's posts this afternoon or this morning and this afternoon. Lots of great content there, behind the scenes stuff. There's even a short 8mm film from behind the scenes with Oak Room, which is super cool to check out. So make sure you hit up our Instagram, give us a follow, and also, hey, follow Mike at Helix Real Ent. At Helix Real Ent and on Instagram, and he's got lots of cool stuff on there from the various projects that he's working on, has worked on, and is working on right now. And listen, Oak Room, it's available now on VOD across Canada, again on Bell, Rogers, Shaw, TELUS, MTS, SaskTel, Kojiko, as well as iTunes, YouTube, and Google. And also make sure you check out Vicious Fun, hitting Shutter.
Yes,
it'll be
definitely
on June 29th. And it's a fantastic film, and it's a horror comedy. It's hilarious. It's also directed by Cody Callahan and produced by Chad Archibald from Black Fawn. It's a great want so make sure you make time for that on Shudder and on June 29th. And listen, last but not least, Mike, just stick around after we go off the air. I just want to touch base on a couple things, but last but not least, let's stay safe and help out. We're almost out of the woods right now. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully we're all back to normal, but listen, wear a mask, get your shot, wash your hands, practice social distancing, do all of those, or at least some of them. I don't care. But also, most importantly, check in on your family and friends, make sure everyone's doing okay, make sure everyone's holding up. It's a tough time out there. I think we're going to month 16 now. So let's keep our heads up. Let's make sure we're helping out, and hopefully we can get back to doing all the fun stuff that we like to do in a normal year, either this year or definitely next year. So let's do that. And Mike, again, thank you so much for joining the program, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Man, this was a lot of fun.
We'll put you through the ringer once again, and hey, good luck on all your future projects. We'll hope to check them out soon.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Until next time, guys, I'm your host, Benner from Black Fawn Distro. This has been another edition of Takeover Tuesday. Check back with us next week for our next guest, and we will be live again in 2 weeks on another Tuesday edition of